There's a reason why I'm doing that, because I needed to make sure that my audio is working, and my audio is being weird. Here we go. 1, 2. That's right. I had to change it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for that first 40 seconds. I've been doing this long enough to know to have your microphone plugged in. All right. So I got a phone call today. I'm grateful to have the kind of relationship with my mom where she's a believer and she will call me from time to time and ask me really deep theological questions. My mom leads a group of women at her church, and sometimes she'll ask me. So it's very humbling for me to be able to have my mom, of all people, who's seen me go from Satan to salvation, right? She's seen me go through a lot. And for her to be a Christian and us to share this tradition and faith together, it's amazing. So my mom called me this morning and she said, "Hey, listen, I need you to check something out for me." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And so she talked about a lady that she met that sounded like it was really good. The lady said she was a believer, believed in God on some level. And she talked about a book called The Four Agreements, right? It's written by Don Miguel Ruiz, all right? The Four Agreements. Now, essentially, this is like these four kind of attributes that almost sound like fruits of the Spirit that lead to like fullness and wholeness. I looked on Amazon and it has like 52,000 like 5-star ratings. So this book is, and my mom was like, something doesn't seem right to me, right? Can you look at it? So I said, okay, I'll download it. I'll listen to it on Audible. It's only like, when I use Audible, I do almost twice the speed. So whatever the book is, it's almost cut in half. So it's an hour and a half of a book. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but the beginning story is essentially this guy discovers light, realizes that it's light that lights the stars, not stars that light. And somehow he comes to this realization that the light is in him and he's God. And then he starts to come up with these ways that we should live in light of that. And he tells people these things, and they're like, "Man, you're like God." And he says, "You know what? You're actually God too." So my mom started talking, and I realized there's something that Christians don't necessarily think when we think about Satan. There's something that we don't think. And essentially, Satan is good, right? Let me explain what I mean. I think this idea, not believing this, has done more damage to the church in the terms of the way we process the culture, right? Satan is good. This is what I had to explain to my mom. I said, "Mom, when these things come up, we have to understand something about Satan, right?" And to do that, I want to ask a question. Is what we believe about Satan cultural, right? Is it cultural? I think to some degree, yes, and let me explain why. Most of us have, first of all, the way that we see Satan in pop culture with a long tail, pitchfork, all red, goatee, horns, none of that stuff describes anything. I mean, when you think about Daniel's visions, right, or the visions in Revelation, the John sees, nothing about that sees sort of this scrawny little dude who's just mischievous and wants to see people do all these bad things, right? We kind of have this view of Satan that if he were ruling the world, that it would be like World War III. People would be killing each other. The majority of society would be serial killers. It would be mass destruction. And that is the way the cultural framework, when they actually have the courage to acknowledge that Satan is a real being and not just a figment of religious imagination, when they actually have the courage, they make it seem like he's sort of this mischievous dude. You ever seen that little thing where angel on one shoulder, Satan on the other, and they're arguing, trying to get you to do something? We kind of have this view of Satan that he's this evil, always wanting bad things. And on one level, you say, well, doesn't the Bible say that? Well, yes, but the Bible also describes something else about Satan that I think, the church, We tend to forget, and what happens is we see things that are good and we think, well, how could that be wrong? That's actually a good thing, right? So let's look at what does the Bible say. Let's look at one passage of scripture that the Bible says that will help us understand that Satan is good. And it's in quotations. You'll see what I mean in just a second. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 11. Okay. This is to me like a forgotten reality for Christians. This is Paul. Let me explain what's happening in 2 Corinthians 11. Paul is pushing back against these people who have come into Corinth, a church that he planted. He spent about 2 years with. These are his people. They come in and say he's not an apostle. And they're teaching a different morality. And Corinth is believing them. So Paul writes 4 letters to Corinth, right? One of them, the 3rd letter, was scathing. Now, out of the 4 letters of Corinth, we only have 2 of them. So we have his 2nd and 4th letter, which we call 1st and 2nd Corinthians, all right? 3rd Corinthians, whatever that was, or there was the 3rd letter, that we have the 4th one. We can tell by what he says in the 4th letter that my other letter was stern, and I was worried about how you would respond. But in 2 Corinthians 7, he says, oh, I hear that you were grieved into repentance. But there's something he says about Satan that's really significant that we don't realize Satan is good. And this is what Paul says. So he's defending his apostleship against people saying he's a false apostle. And here's what he says, 2 Corinthians 11, beginning in verse 12. Here's what he says. And what I am doing, I will continue to do in order to undermine the claim of those who would like to claim that in their boasted mission, they work on the same terms as we do. Okay, that's verse 13. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, listen to this, and no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So listen to what he says. For these men are deceitful, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. How can you disguise yourself as an apostle of Christ and be talking about kill each other and murder? And that's nothing that Christ did. You cannot disguise yourself as an apostle of Christ unless you're going to speak of some form of morality that Christ would agree with. All right? Then you get to verse 15, and he says this. So it is no surprise if his servants, let's go back real quick, verse 14. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Darkness, right? Light is good. God saw that the light was good, and he separated it and good. Okay, right? Then it goes to 14. Satan describes himself as an angel of light. So it is no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond to, listen, servants of righteousness. What is righteousness? Holiness, good deeds, morality, right? Here's what Paul is telling us. Satan will disguise himself as good, as moral, as righteous. He will, and his apostles disguise themselves as apostles of Christ, right? So what are the things that Christ stands for? Love, mercy, grace, and all of it. Okay, so what do you mean by Satan is good, and why do we have to pay attention to this? Here's why. Because if we think that Satan's job is, and don't get me wrong, the Bible does say he steals, kills, and destroys. Don't get me wrong. The Bible does say he's looked like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So we do get our concept of Satan as that. But we forget about 2 Corinthians 11, and the culture doesn't care about the Bible at all. So they present Satan as just always evil. So when you see some semblance of morality or something that's close to the biblical perspective of righteousness, you think that's good, right? Case in point. This is why the idea of sexuality and different unions, this is why it's happening. Remember the phrase, love is love, right? The Bible is described as in fact, we are known to the world by our love for one another, right? Our love should be what people recognize. Those things, right? These concepts of fairness and righteousness and equal, all the different things Satan is fine with that. Satan loves morality. He has no problem with morality. If we think that all he wants to do is have the whole world killing each other, we're deceived. Satan has no problem with morality unless it is Messiah motivated morality. He doesn't care if people love each other, if they get married or if they don't, if they serve each other, if they're kind to each other. Remember, he appears as an angel of light, as one of righteousness. All the fruits of the Spirit are all about righteousness, right? We live righteous being. Satan appears as that. So things will happen in our day and age, in our culture, that are good things. They're righteous things. They seem like this is what Christ would want. Love is a fundamental category, right? But he doesn't want you to do it if it's motivated by obedience to the Messiah. Jesus said, if you love me, obey my commands. Satan has no problem with good. He's good. He loves good, as long as it's not connected to Jesus Christ. Now, how does this affect us? Because we live in a culture that is trying to define itself with these qualities of what good is. So love has been hijacked. We've all, if you're a genuine Christian, we've all gotten pushback from the culture on our views because we have a view of love and sexuality and a number of different things that the culture says, what's the problem? God is love. These two people love each other. That's what you should want, right? What's the problem? Or we think good is the way we have the economic. We think good. Hey, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, these are all good things, good for society. They're good. They're good. But are they motivated by obedience to the Messiah? Is it Messiah motivated morality? That's what the enemy has a problem with. And if we think that the only thing that will be good is the opposite of Satan, we're going to be deceived. And many Christians have been deceived because we only think Satan wants harm and bad. No, listen, let's go back. For the people in the back, look, he says, and no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. They are tricking a lot of people because on one level, it is a good thing to do this. It is we want people to love each other. But what's motivating that love? Satan is good in the sense that he loves righteousness that doesn't want to imitate and is not motivated by Jesus. And many of us, we're just getting punched in the mouth because we just think, well, that's not bad. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, why wouldn't you? And that's the logic of the world. It's a satanic righteousness disguising itself as Christian. And sadly, many professing Christians are playing the role right into it. So much emphasis and so much allegiance to things that are good in the culture, but they really have nothing to do with Christ. They're good things, right? This is why Paul says also in the same letter to Corinthians, he says, look, everything is permissible. So in other words, it's not sinful, but he said, but it's not beneficial. It's not beneficial. It's not sinful to have a political position or vote or do a lot of these things. It's not sinful to homeschool your kids or something in public school. It's permissible. It's not sinful, but it may not be beneficial. He said, all things are lawful, but all things don't build one another up. You see, there's goodness and morality that doesn't build people up. We have to be careful. Satan is good in the sense that he will appear as an angel of light, and those who are with him will disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. There is no righteousness. They don't have to disguise themselves if it's evil. They disguise themselves as the things that they're promoting are good. And the things that they're promoting are good have nothing to do with Jesus, and it's pulling people away because we're all made in God's image, so everyone cares about certain things. It's not Christians aren't made in God's image. Everyone is made in God's image. That's why all these other religions that, if you believe the Bible, are cosmic evil powers of darkness, they all have morality in them, right? Why in the world do atheists want to be good people? They want to be a good person. I want to pay my taxes. I want to have a good marriage. I want to do this. I want to do that. And you tell people you need to believe in Jesus. For what? I'm not a bad person. I don't do this. I don't do that. It's all morality that has nothing to do with the Messiah. And we're in a culture where so much of the good appears as righteousness, but it's actually not. And it will pull us away from biblical conviction to having cultural Christianity. It's good. Love is a good thing, but not all love is good. This is what I'm telling you. This is what's happening. So books like what this guy wrote, the 4 agreements, it's all just 4 fruits of the Spirit for real. I was like, Ma, all these things are stuff that the Bible, we don't have a problem with these things, patience, kindness, goodness. That's not the point. The point is, what's motivating that? Lastly, in closing, the thing you have to realize is what makes you Christian, what makes your obedience Christian. Okay? Muslims, Jehovah's Witness, Buddhists, non-Christians, everyone prays to someone, right? They all are trying to be loving. They serve, they give. I know non-Christians who resist sexual sin, who have never committed adultery, who have good relationships with their children. Muslims pray 5 times a day. I know some Christians that don't pray 5 times in the course of a week. What makes your morality Christian? What makes your actions Christian different from all these other religions? Why do all these other religions have a morality? Why does atheism even strive to be a good person? Why do non-Christians decide to go to Africa and help those countries build wells? Why did non-Christian police officers and fire department run towards the falling buildings in 9/11 to save lives, and they weren't believers? They risked their own lives and did it. It wasn't motivated by Christ. Why do those things exist? Why? Because we're made in God's image, so morality matters. This is why when Jesus came, he said stuff like this. You have heard it was said, but I say, do this. You have heard it said, love your loved ones and hate your enemies. But I say, pray for your enemies, right? There's this reality. So we have to be careful that there are good things that appear righteous, that have nothing to do with the Messiah. They're not motivated. What makes your obedience Christian and mine is that we're trying to honor Jesus Christ. The actions in and of themselves, there's not a religion that I can think of that says be evil, mean-spirited, rape, kill, murder. They all have a semblance of do good works. Do good works. Be kind. Be gentle. Love people. Everyone strives for that. Why? Because Satan appears as an angel of light. He doesn't have a problem with good. He's good as long as it's not connected to wanting to honor the Lord. What do I know? Church, pay attention. Pay attention. Run DMC said it best. Not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good. Not good meaning good, but good meaning bad. Hate me. Subscribe to the channel. Do all of it. Stop being like Satan. Thanks for the comments. Comment section is popping right now. I'm out. Gotta go pick up my son. Love you. Subscribe to the channel. See you next video.